Every Sunday night at Chet's Lounge on Archer Street in Justice, Illinois, they leave a Bloody Mary at the end of the bar for a ghost by the name of Resurrection Mary. Resurrection Mary has been haunting Archer Street since the 30s when she used to dance at the O. Henry Dance Hall. Our story begins with a man I never heard of who remembers meeting the ghost of Resurrection Mary as if it was yesterday.
Go away. That's enough.
He remembers dancing with the ghost before he knew it was a ghost, and he noticed her hands were very cold and her skin was brittle, which immediately made me worry that perhaps I'm dead. At the end of the night, she asks him if he could give her a ride home, but on the drive, when they get to the Resurrection Cemetery, she tells him she needs to get out there and says, "You cannot follow me, don't go any further," which is coincidentally a tattoo I have on my ass. As soon as she touches the gates, she vanishes. So this is how she ghosts him. I usually ghost guys by crawling out the ladies' room window with my dignity. Dignity is what I call my vagina, only when I'm mad at it, otherwise I call it my pizzazz. After not being able to find her in the cemetery, he goes to the address and asks if Mary is there. Her parents answer and say she died 4 years ago in a car accident. I use this excuse a lot too. My parents know the drill. It turns out in Mary's case, this story is true. A friend was driving and they had a car accident and she went right through the windshield and died on the way to the hospital. This is why when I'm getting out of a car, I always try to exit through the door. Her family was so poor she was buried in something called a term grave, which is a grave you rent for 20 to 25 years. I'm going to be buried in a timeshare grave. That's where I only get to stay 2 weeks in August. So after all her family died, they moved her body to an unmarked grave somewhere in the cemetery. The stories continue with the police getting phone calls in the middle of the night about a woman milling around the cemetery, but when they get there, all they find are 2 scorched handprints pulling the bars apart as though someone's trying to get out of the cemetery. If you're going to pull a bar apart, pull apart the one that keeps leaving you the Bloody Mary every Sunday. Really, is that funny to someone that was disfigured going through a windshield in a car accident? Maybe they could leave you something more relaxing, like a sex on the beach. But the most common legend is that people would pick up a pretty blonde hitchhiker who would be in the back seat of the car, and then they would turn around and she would suddenly vanish. Here's why I would never be a good urban legend.
And if you have a 4-hour erection, call me. Save big money at Menard. And then the bear said, "You don't come here for the hunting, do you?" What about the kiwi? I don't remember that when I was a kid. Is that new? Spring rose, sweet cherry.
Aren't you supposed to vanish? When are you gonna vanish?
And worst of all, who wants to be buried in a cemetery called Resurrection Cemetery? When I'm all done with my set, I'm out of here. In fact, when you give me the light, I'm going right to it.